Greetings, my name is Tommy the Keyblade Master and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking something that's a little bit outside of my comfort zone and something I probably don't have a lot of knowledge at. I'm someone who's from a small town and for various reasons I don't leave my small town very often, but I do read, I do communicate with people outside using the internet. So here's my best response to Alloy 7's latest Gamer Life about cognitive diversity in the game industry and why he feels like we need some. Now, cognitive diversity does not necessarily mean different races, different genders, different religion. Those more describe us on the outside. What cognitive diversity is and why it's harder to do is differences of thought and opinion. And he's right. We as human beings usually cluster with people that not only look like us, but oftentimes act and agree with us. And in business, it's oftentimes seen that the people who are the most successful oftentimes have people who are very much different from them around them and often are willing to listen to them. They oftentimes react faster, see the changes faster than companies that oftentimes have people who are just yes man around the boss. Usually when that happens, things are slow to change and the things sink. But anyways, yeah, there are very sexist and oftentimes very racist characters in video games. I do have to point out that the two that he mentions in his video, Barret from Final Fantasy VII, who is a kind of racist Mr. T ripoff, and then Dead and Alive bouncing boob physics, those are both from Japan. And I'm going to assume it's a very different culture over there. The way they have women in Japan's kind of up and down. You do have those bouncing boob simulators, but then you have the series like Tales of franchise, which usually treats the women fairly good. Usually they're strong characters, and normally there's not exactly, around for eye candy. Usually they're very well developed. They're usually very likable. There's one or two exceptions I could name, but for the most part, that franchise is fairly strong, and there are other RPG franchises that try to make the women stronger from Japan, and there are also franchises over here that do that as well. When it comes to the Barret thing, and you have to understand, I don't think there's a huge African community in Japan, and whenever I see an African portrayed in anime or in a Japanese video game, oftentimes I could say it stems from their exposure to American pop culture and not to any influence that an African American or someone of African descent had on their workforce. They were getting it from elsewhere. So that kind of explains Barret from Final Fantasy VII and Sazh from Final Fantasy XIII. Both of them are very much heavy into pop cultural references from America. It's kind of unfortunate that they aren't authentic by any means, and yes, they are racist. But I don't think there was any ill will behind those characters, just based on the way those characters act, but that's just my opinion. What do I think the solution is? Well, I think the solution actually won't come from the game companies themselves, but will often be with us, the consumer. Right now, if you look at it, and this is what Alloy 7 is doing too, he's looking at the console AAA games. And if you look at it from there, right now they are very much heavily male marketed and oriented. And for the most part, that's who plays those types of games. It's kind of men from the 15 to probably their 40 playing, and kind of our base desire for men is we want to see a pretty girl and we want to beat stuff up. And that's who it's marketed for, and that's who it's kind of buying the game. So until that changes, that's who's the AAA marketplace is going to be marketed for. Personally, I think it's a shame because I do enjoy some of these games, but I'm not really a huge fan of games that have me having orgy sex and tearing off people's heads. If you like God of War, feel free to chime in. I'm not going to play it. That type of stuff isn't for me. But since that's what's selling, that's what the game industry is going to make, invisible hand of the marketplace. But if you look outside, and I think eventually all these forces will come together, you'll eventually, find console game being made for women. Because right now, you have a huge boom in the industry towards other devices. Indie downloads, we have social media, we have mobile games. All of these are huge and growing, and probably in a lot of ways are more sustainable models than the $60 AAA games of the past. And what are a lot of these games? Well, a lot of them are marketed towards women. They are more puzzle games, and oftentimes, just because of the way they are set up, a lot of us console gamers don't consider them games. Just look at any comment from an IGN article where so-and-so developer is going to make a mobile version of the latest franchise, and you usually have comments about how that's not a real game from us, quote, console gamers. But I hate to break it to you guys, those are considered games, and I see them more marketed towards women more than console games. And as these grow more successful, I think people who make console games will want to start tapping into that market too and bring people over into their console games. Mainly because, the more people who buy them, the more they can sustain. Like I said, the 1080p 60 frames per second that we console gamers demand nowadays is ludicrously expensive, and we don't want any of that DLC crap, shoveled at us. So, the console gamer industry is eventually going to have to expand past that male marketplace. As far as the minority marketplace is concerned, the only way I can see that changing is if they themselves decide they have to break in. Again, this isn't going to be a change that comes from the top. It can't come from the top. It's a change that's going to have to come from the bottom. This is going to be, again, pressure from the consumers and new ideas entering the marketplace. So if minorities want to be better represented in games, they're going to have to find a way to get into the industry. Easier said than done, I do realize this, but again, one of the ways might be is you might have a developer that's more catered towards minorities, hiring these minorities, and I don't mean just as tokens. I mean either because they're ran by said minority group and they want to make games that represent that culture is their focus. And we might see that coming into the game industry too. Like I said, the indie game scene is right now exploding, and that might be where that starts. Again, the place where this starts isn't going to be the top. It isn't going to be trying to place laws and forcing the top to do something. It's going to come down to the consumer as well as the entrepreneur who wants to see things change, coming in and stepping up. Anyways, that's my opinion on this. If you have a comment, feel free to leave it below. Thank you for listening to my rant, and for all those Alloy 7 Gamer Life people who are responding, again, I would love to hear your comments. Anyways, this is Tommy the Keyblade Master signing out.